John Milton said, "Give me the liberty to know, to utter and to argue freely according to conscience above all liberties." And in a free society such as Britain, you have the right to do all sorts of things with which many people may disagree. But the essence of having principles is that you continue to hold them in times when they are tested. So the pro-Palestinian movement is scheduled to have another march this Saturday on Armistice Day. And this is potentially a significant insult to British tradition and heritage, the nation to which the protesters themselves belong. But the protesters have the right to do it. Peaceful protest is a fundamental right in the United Kingdom. And part of living in a free society is accepting these things, even if you feel that they're unpleasant. Now, there is a but, and an important but. The Public Order Act of 1986 grants the Home Secretary powers to stop protests if they pose a threat to public order. And unfortunately, this proposed protest almost certainly does, and therefore it seems that the Home Secretary would be in her rights to stop it. But it would be better if the organisers cancelled it out of respect for the war dead. The protesters should know, just because you have the right to do something does not mean that you have to do it or that you should do it. Having the legal right to do something is not a moral endorsement of doing that thing. And these protests are not always what they purport to be. We're told these protests are about freedom for Palestinians, but what they've come to represent is this bizarre cross-section of wokery, Islamism and thuggery. The wokery is seen in the pseudo-anti-colonial rhetoric rife on our streets. We're told that Zionism is a colonial project, that it's a matter of European people oppressing other people. But this isn't true, it's just a demonstration of wokeness. Islamism is seen when groups intent on establishing a global caliphate under Sharia law, such as Hizb ut-Tahrir, hold 100-strong rallies on the sidelines of the protests calling for jihad. And as for thuggery, well, just last weekend we saw plenty of it, with people shooting fireworks at police, skirmishes, people being harassed outside McDonald's and railway stations being occupied. The point is that while the majority of protesters aren't violent or extreme, there is a spectrum. On the one hand, you have the sort of people who call for Allah's curses to be on the infidels and the Jews, and on the other, you have the people who are genuinely concerned about Palestine and merely want to express their support for people struggling in Gaza. But in between those two poles, you have a large number of people who may not necessarily be extremist, but hold deeply unsavoury views about Israel, about Britain and about the wider Western world. And it's these people that permit the more extreme elements to exist. It is these people who create the safe space for extremists who then feel able to take to the streets and call for jihad and Allah's curses and other villainies. And it's these sort of people who tear down posters of missing Israeli hostages or vandalise them with obscenities. What would happen if someone were to enter these crowds with an Israeli flag? Well, that isn't a rhetorical question. It happened. And what would happen if someone entered the crowd holding a sign with an accurate statement saying Hamas is terrorist? Again, not a rhetorical question. There is a responsibility on the wider participants to consider the company they keep. And they should also remember the sacrifices their own ancestors made in the wars. It is their Armistice Day as much as any other British citizen. It wasn't just Britain that fought in the great wars of the 20th century. It was the British Empire. Millions of people from across the Indian subcontinent, across Africa, from the Caribbean, from all over the world fought for the Allies. And we should remind our fellow Britons that to respect Armistice Day is to respect our shared heritage. So I urge them to commemorate Armistice Day and leave protesting for another day.